All right, we will bring this meeting to order with the roll call.
Directors Osborne, Veerkamp, Anzini, and Day present. Director Dwyer is absent. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Polson, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan present.
Okay, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Veerkamp, would you start us off?
Please, yes, everybody. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right, we're at that moment to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Director Day and seconded by Director Veerkamp to adopt the agenda.
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instruction on page 2 of today's agenda. This is the open public comment period for the adoption of today's agenda. We have one person wishing to speak, and this is for open public comment on the adoption of today's agenda.
Hi, Council. My name is Commissioner Garrett Pinguello. I'm from Georgetown. Can I pull items off the consent calendar, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Sir, actually, this is on the adoption of today's agenda. The consent calendar is later, just a couple items later, and you can.
Okay, yeah, I move to accept the agenda.
I'm sorry, you don't have privileges to vote on this.
He's filling in for past days.
Yeah, okay. We would love to hear your comment under public comment or when we move to approve our consent calendar, sir.
Okay, we're ready for the vote on the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Veerkamp. Division 1, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
I'd like to just make one comment for those who are not in presence of this room but watching on the Zoom meeting, that follow the agenda if you can, so it'll make our job a little easier. Thank you. Communications.
I have nothing specific, but we do have the employee recognition barbecue this Wednesday around noontime. I have all the employees attend. With that, I have 2 comments under my report under the other communications. Thank you.
Okay. We will move to public comment, and this is an opportunity for those to speak on anything that is not on the agenda.
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda.
Hi, good morning, Council. I would just like to say that our water is really good, and this commission is doing such a great job on keeping our water clean, all the way from, Stumpy Meadows, all the way down the irrigation ditch. And I just want to say, keep up the good work, everybody.
Well, thank you very much. Can you identify yourself for us, please?
Yeah, my name is Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello, and I'm a GDL. I'm from Georgetown local.
Okay, thank you for your positive feedback. Hopefully you are an EID customer, or are you Georgetown? We'll take anything we can get.
Yeah, I get my water from the irrigation ditch that runs through Georgetown.
Okay, so you're in the wrong meeting, but that's okay. Join us. Thank you very much. Any other public comments?
It does not appear there are any additional members of the public wishing to speak on our public comment period.
All right, we will move on to communications. General Manager?
Thank you. I have two today. One is in your package, the other one was added at the last minute. Elizabeth, would you mind just briefly sharing with the board the information on the grant and Outingdale, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. Elizabeth Dawson, Engineering Manager at the district. Just reminding everyone, back in 2015, the district was awarded a Proposition 84 Integrated Regional Water Management Application Grant in the amount of $152,000 to offset the cost of the refurbishment and construction of our Outingdale Water Treatment Plant intake project. That project rehabilitated the raw water intake, the pumps, the electrical systems, and greatly improved the stairway access for better ingress and egress for our plant staff. Our partners at the Regional Water Authority helped us administer the grant, and they recently sent us a check in the amount of $136,800, which is 90% of the reimbursable costs under the funding agreement. When the project is fully complete in May, we will receive the remaining funds from RWA.
Great, thank you very much.
We also are sending out article directly to the Outingdale customers highlighting what we've done over the last 5 years. The board will receive a copy of that. The next item, if you could pull up the bond issue. I was requested just to close the loop on how we proceeded with the revenue bonds process. So I just pulled documents from the past board meetings that we shared with the board. The first slide, and I apologize, it didn't make the board package, it was brought up after the fact. But the first bullet there, the taxable market interest rates as of January 20th. And the second item up there, the one that was dated February 16th, that was presented to the board on February 8th, and then the following on March 14th. Unfortunately, the good news was when we started investigating this, we had a huge cash flow savings of $22 million net present value. And as we experienced, the interest rates started going up relatively quickly, which we did not anticipate. So within a month, it dropped down to almost $17 million in net present value savings. We continued to try and process this as quickly as we could. In fact, even called a special board meeting. Next slide, please. And then the taxable interest rates as of April 1st changed again, and the net present value savings was around $14 million. Make a long story short, by the time we finished the project and had it all closed up, the net present value savings was $10 million. Not the one we really wanted 3 months ago or earlier on, but nonetheless, a very positive outcome for our ratepayers. In the last slide, please. So kind of in summary, the rapid market changes in interest rates started in mid-January, and it went from 3.16 to 4.6. In retrospect, I wish we were closer to get it done, but sometimes things just happen. But the final issuance, again, a great deal for our customers at present value savings of about $10 million.
Okay, any questions from the board?
And just a request for moving forward on this, if we can kind of track, well, I think we had requested before, just wanted to reiterate that at least annually, we kind of look at the cash flow savings and adjust the net present value savings. Yeah, obviously not as good as we had hoped. Gives me some trepidation because the margin is narrower than we'd hoped. But again, I think if things go in an ordinary fashion, then we'll still have some positive savings from it. But if we could just track that and then report to the board each year as we go, as to how it's progressing, how it's meeting our projections, and so on.
Yeah, actually, when Mark was here, we modified a AR that identifies this specifically as a reserve account that we can bring back to the board, showing what's in the reserve account for future UAL changes and funding.
Anything else?
And that's end of my report.
Thank you. No questions. All right. Okay. Clerk of the board.
Nothing today, thank you.
Okay. Board members, reports? George? Director
Just
Osborne.
where's my crown? No. Anyway, just ironic how things change in a hurry, and we're in the water world, so. But I just got back from a week in Kona, and on Tuesday, the governor came out with an impassioned plea for everybody to restrain water, save 10 to 15%. On Thursday, they had floods in Kauai and minor flooding in Oahu, and so just overnight, here, you know, he's and I don't know, you just don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, I just thought it was kind of ironic because we've been in the same boat. You know, here we're asking our people to conserve, and then we get these late April rains. You know, so anyway, just thought I'd mention that.
Director Redcamp?
Yes, LAFCO meeting this coming Wednesday. We'll be selecting the public member. That seat is up. There's 4 candidates, including the incumbent. Also, get an update on the executive officer recruitment and hopefully approve the work plan and budget for the upcoming year.
That's from LAFCO.
Yep,
Okay.
LAFCO.
Director Day? Nothing to report? Okay, I did attend the Aqua conference that was downtown Sacramento 2 weeks ago. Happened to be a nice hot day and a very, very windy day. So I got there and attended a couple of the finance and the legal workshops. Good job for our attorney. Our general counsel did a great job, along with Elizabeth, our assistant general counsel. And it's always impressive to see our employees in the leadership role of Aqua, and I really did enjoy that. So good job, and the information that came forward is basically conference ready, but there was nothing that I saw was really, really important, but it was a good event for first one that they've had in a long time, and to network with other water agencies. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to approve the consent calendar.
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Director Osborne, seconded by Director Veerkamp to approve the consent calendar. This is an opportunity for any members in the room or the public to pull any items for us to discuss.
Actually, that's incorrect.
Is it?
They can comment on the consent
make
calendar.
comments, yes. We
I-
can pull.
I'll ask General Counsel, okay.
No, any board member can pull it, but we would hear from the public on any items that are on the consent calendar.
We have a member of the public wishing to speak.
Please identify your name and where you live.
Yes, I'd like to speak. Oh, thank you. Yeah, my name is Jeremiah Garrett Minguello. I'm from Georgetown. I'd like to speak on number 2, also 3, 4, and 5. So number 2, I just want to say thank you to your commitment to helping the Caldor fire emergency and providing water to the community. It's really important. And I just want to say thank you very much and keep up the good work.
Anything else?
That's it on number 2.
You could do them all.
Okay, yep. So number 3, I noticed, it's I was just kind of wondering about, the labor involved. And also, I'm just wondering why it costs $90,000, almost $100,000 to do a topography survey.
Actually, sir, some of these questions are answered within the board packet. I don't know if you had time to review it. And if they're not answered in the board packet, you can feel free to go to our website or give us a call and you can do a public information request. This is the time for the board to take comments. They're not at liberty or they do not, we don't answer questions at this time. We just receive the comments. So if you would like, you can email the clerk to the board, which is on the website, or you could email admin@eid.org, and I can help you with the board packet or get some answers to your information. But any additional comments, feel free to make them. It's just not at this time. It's not a question and answer.
Thank you, that's correct. Right, you're not able to answer any public comments. Okay, so and then I just want to comment on number 4, please. I would just like to comment on, I noticed there's a big chunk of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace the pump.
This is a cost that we've already incurred, and we're completing
Yeah,
the
I was just-
project.
That's incorrect.
Right.
This is a new purchase that we had
Right.
a B-side failure, and we're going to replace that, so we have that spare capacity in case there's an issue down there.
New spare pump.
Again, sir, the questions that you have, most of them are located in the board packet that is on our website, along with the agenda at eid.org. But again, I don't want to discourage you from making any comments. However, your questions are answered, and if they're not answered in the board packet, please feel free to reach out to me at admin@eid.org, and I can point you in the right direction. But please continue with any further public comment that you have.
Thank you for clarification. I do apologize sincerely. I just noticed on number 4 there were no numbers for the labor, for the cost of the actual labor. It was kind of only the cost for purchasing, but I could be wrong. And then number 5, I was just making a comment that $350,000 approximately to cut down some trees. I was wondering if the district can save money by utilizing our resources, such as, Growlersburg Camp in Georgetown, or any of the other, prison camps or CDF. That way it doesn't come out of our taxpayer dollars. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Sir, we appreciate your comments, and we never want to discourage public participation. And I'm sorry that we weren't able to answer your questions, but again, I just want to direct you back to the board packets where your questions are answered, and we do serve the public, and we do appreciate your participation.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other people who want to discuss certain items that we're about ready to move forward on?
No, it does not appear there are any additional members of the public wishing to speak on the approval of the consent calendar, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Camp. I imagine we're ready for a vote at this point.
Yes, thank you. Let's take the vote.
Division 1, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
Okay, we will now move on to information items.
And before Dan gets up there, if you would want to consider, we have 4 members of the crew that helped restore flumes 4, 5, and 6, and 30. And maybe we could move up 15 right after Dan to cover that, so they can go about their business, if that's acceptable.
That's fine.
Well, actually, I thought that we wanted to do the status of the update along with number 14. So maybe we could move up 15, do 15 now, do 11, 12, 13, and then 10 and 14 at the same time?
Well, Carrie's not here. Let's do Dan right now,
Okay.
and then we'll do 15.
Yeah, but it's air conditioning here, I think the guys want to stay.
Yeah.
So I thought we wanted to do it along with the
It's okay, I don't mind being a second choice, so. Good morning.
Jim.
And obviously, I know Sybil and Reed has been hard at work for many days, as Carrie will tell you, so we'll get them back out as soon as we can. So Jen's gonna pull my presentation for you. We didn't quite have a Hawaiian monsoon in April, but we did have a favorable one, and that's the update that we'll give you here this morning. Just a moment for technology. Okay. We're here to give you basically the final runoff update for the year. We'll keep you obviously apprised of reservoir management over the course of the summer. And I don't want to steal anything from Carrie's outstanding presentation going forward, but I did want to cheat a little bit and show the El Dorado Canal in full power there. So next slide, please. That's the inlet and then the inlet to Forebay. Overall, since our last update, as projected, water supply conditions have improved. Thankful for our April precipitation, April showers this year, and a very mild first half of May, which helped slow down the runoff. Obviously, our heat last week as well as tomorrow and Wednesday definitely picking up, but we were able to really manage that runoff during the first half of May, which helped reservoir management. We did have reduced overall demands first quarter of the year, quite high as expected, with very low precipitation, warm, mild, with very high demands. Those have backed off quite a bit, as you'll see. We're definitely on track to meet our end of storage at Jenkinson Lake with reduced reliance on Hazel Creek Tunnel. We're definitely well positioned to meet our demands this year, and we were actually already pivoting to planning for next year, should next year be dry. Next slide, please. So this is as of the board packet was published. Effectively, all the reservoirs, Project 184 are full. We're managing their runoff. We'd actually have, with some heavy wind up there, had to bring down cables a little bit last week, and that's coming back up today. Jenkinson Lake, we continue to manage to meet the end of year carryover. And Folsom Reservoir actually has gained almost another 20,000 acre feet even in the past week. So it crossed 854,000 this morning, which is definitely positive news. Next slide, please. So as I said, we're really just kind of managing the tail of the runoff now in the reservoirs. And we're meeting Jenkinson Lake. We're meeting our Res A treatment plant. We did eventually bring on Reservoir 1 about May 11th. So now that plant has started up. And until then, all of our flows were actually 100% to hydroelectric power generation. So we're up to about, as of this morning, 20, and we just bumped to 25 CFS at Res 1 now, and everything's going perfect with the new piping project there. Excuse me, always a tongue twister. Weber Reservoir remains full and will, unless and until we need that to meet demands later this year. Fortunately, with the very high lake levels, we're not anticipating any constraints on the permit 2112 supplies, so really don't anticipate needing that, that supply down at Folsom this year. Next slide, please. What I wanted to, this is obviously our ongoing chart that we, just historical projections comparison for every year of Jenkinson Lake's operation. The one piece I wanted to draw to highlight for you this time, you notice how close those two lines are, and that's showing a decreased reliance this year on Hazel Creek Tunnel. So that, as that gap closes, that really shows you how much of the local runoff has helped in the Camp Creek and Park Creek watershed. It was quite the wallop in April. and we definitely benefited from that. So we're maybe down to around 1,000 acre feet, maybe a little bit more this year, and it'll depend on really how this last part of May goes with the heat. We're still planning to meet our end of September carryover around 23.8. Next slide, please. So as we said, we had a very dry first quarter of the year, which brought some healthy demands, and we did have our moderated demands with both the precip and the mild weather over the past month or so. We are starting to see a change, and you'll see in the chart from the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center are starting to see increased chance of continued below normal precip next year, and so that's why we're starting to prepare for that. It's very early, but we obviously like to plan ahead, and that's where we are right now. Next slide, please. So as compared to a very high demand in January through March, we're actually down 28% year over year in March, or excuse me, in April, and then we're looking about the same, maybe 20 to 25%, depending upon how strong we fill off. And that just shows last year, remember, it stopped raining by April 1, and this year's when it started raining. So you see kind of the inter-month variability. And so obviously the last bullet there, as we transition, we get out of spring, we won't see that variability anymore, but just shows how volatile the spring can be. Next slide, please. And it's highlighted in this chart here. 2021 is the sort of purplish line there. As you see very high spring demands. We're actually above that during the first 3 months in the year, and we've since crossed over that. So you see quite a bit lower in April and projected in May. We always assume, for the purpose of water supply planning, a return to similar demands of the prior year in June and July. Whether or not we climb back up, maybe not. Maybe we sort of turn the curve already, and we'll keep going on that. But for the purposes of reservoir management, we project a higher demand here. Next slide, please. And as I said, Folsom Reservoir is continuing to rise, and I'm sure if you turn on the news, you see there's a lot of attention to Folsom Reservoir this year and how it's going to be drawn down rather rapidly. The latest article I saw was related to recreation, but still as for water supply for delta outflow. So fortunately, we just completed our intake upgrade project, and so we're well versed and prepared to handle any lake level that we might encounter this year. Don't expect to return to those extremely low levels we had a few years ago. Either way, we'll be ready. And as I said, we're planning solely to rely on local supplies from Project 184, Permit 2112 this year. Next slide, please. And it's just a comparison of Folsom Reservoir over the past couple years. The light blue polygon for those in the audience is a 50-year average. Last year is the light blue on the bottom. 2020 is the red, and then this dark blue is this year. As you see, we've already climbed another 20,000 acre feet since this was published. So we're doing quite well, and we're actually above the historical average, which is good. And now it's just a descending limb.
Dan, I had a couple people ask me this, just one of these kind of random questions. When's the do we know, I mean, we don't manage Folsom Lake, but when's the last time it was full, quote unquote? Do we know?
Probably 2017 and 2019,
Right.
2016. Full is a relative term, but when it's encroaching and they increase those releases. But if you remember, even in December, we were above even then. So depends upon the time of day when people say full, but where it looks, we don't have the bathtub ring was about 2019 was the last time we were.
Yeah, those big rains after the last round.
Yeah. For Folsom Reservoir to fill, in quotes, I guess, for those virtually, we would need to have a nice mild, wet, late spring. So because you can't actually completely fill it until Memorial Day based upon the flood control curve.
Right.
And so we're finishing the runoff even before Memorial Day. So obviously in this type of year, that wouldn't occur.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, and this is the last hurrah of spring, and we'll quickly go through these slides. Next slide, please. Continued blow, dry, warm conditions. You can just go ahead and cycle through these real quick, Jen. So no precip on the horizon, which isn't surprising when you see the dead vegetation and warm weather this week. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide I want to bring your attention to, and this is the one on the left is the prior long-term. So this is long-term weather, kind of looking ahead into next fall. We were looking kind of average ocean conditions in the fall. As you can see, and we were on the one on the right is this most recent one issued just last week. So you can see that there's a variation of models, but if you think the thick lines are the average, the statistical and dynamic averages, also continue to show now about a half degree Celsius below normal, so slightly cooler weather again going into the end of this year, which is where we had last year, about a half degree. So not a very concerning sign, but just a sign of continued diligence about the potential for ongoing drought conditions into 2023. And this is what we're planning for in terms of our reservoir management. Okay, and I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, Dan. Finish up, then I have to ask a question.
Sure, and then our last slide, just would always like to give you an update on our outreach efforts. Our most recent May-June waterfront that was sent to all of our customers talking about how to keep your trees healthy during a drought. And then just remind everybody, we do have our complimentary water surveys that we do provide all of our customers free of charge. And then just sometimes efficient irrigation is better than more irrigation, and just reminding folks it's not always better to put more water on the ground. So keep your plants healthy. And we did have, at least last month and earlier this month, a reminder about rain and turning off the water for 48 hours. Obviously don't need to worry about that right now. So, and last slide is just a reminder, this is Echo Reservoir, full and spilling. So this was taken last week. So as you can see, this is all of Project 184 reservoirs right now, very healthy watershed conditions in the upper watershed. And that's the end of my presentation.
Dan, what's the status, I mean, you may not have an answer for this right now, but the status of Shasta, Oroville, and Trinity, what's the impact going to be on Folsom? Because when I left, they were way down, still considerably way down from what historically they should have been, and that obviously has an impact on Folsom with releases to the Delta.
Right.
Do you any inclination of where we are with that?
You know, there hasn't been any change. To say Shasta is the worst by far. It's what's called a critical year. Very low condition, very challenging condition for temperature management, for salmon, for water supply allocations in the upper Sacramento Valley. Oroville's faring a little bit better, but we were very benefited by where the storms came this year. Just the storm track happened to hit us. So there's really not anybody else that is in a similar condition that is the American River this year. So that means that we tend to have to share, and our outflows this year will be much, I would say, significantly higher than they are in typical summer, because they're using the American River to comply with their water quality obligations at state and federal projects, instead of sharing that burden a little differently with Oroville and Shasta. So,
Yeah, thanks. You answered, unfortunately, you answered the way I thought it was going to be.
yeah.
Is our powerhouse working?
It is. It's been up and running. We actually, and I don't want to steal too much of Carrie's presentation, but it's been running for a month now.
Okay,
so it's
thanks.
exciting.
All right. I'll look forward to that one.
We just have to double check if there's any members of the public wishing to speak on information item number 10. Does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on information item 10. And as Jim suggested, since we have folks here, staff would like the board to consider action item number 15 at this time. Okay.
Okay. There's a request that we approve item number 15. Not a. Listen to, I'm sorry. Okay. I left my computer at home and it doesn't keep me in sync. Okay. So item number 15, we're going to hear regarding the contract changes for Seiblin.
All right, good morning, members of the board. Carrie Muchler, Senior Civil Engineer for the district. We're going to discuss today some of the restoration updates that we've had on flumes 4 through 6 and flume 30, as well as some construction change orders that we're needing for flume 30 to get that completed. Next slide, Jen. So some previous board actions, this is just kind of a synopsis of some of them. On August 23rd, just before the fire took out Flume 30, we awarded a contract to Sybil and Reed for the construction or the rehabilitation of Flume 30. And then after the fires hit, we had some ratification of contracts for the Flumes 4 through 6. And then we've been back a couple of times for some board updates on December 13th and February 14th to go over some of the progress that we have been having with that project, or with those projects. Next slide. I want to just bring out a couple of points. We added a couple of slides after the packets were put together. I'll tell you which slides that we added when we get to them. But today we are just going to go over some updates. We've got a video to show everyone. It's a time-lapse type video of the construction activities. And then we'll be going over the change orders. And we have a little show and tell with that to go with it. So next slide, please. Just a brief synopsis of where we're looking at again. We got our intake facility right there on the right. Flume 4, 5, and 6 are all real close together. And then past the Mildable Tunnel, right out the outlet is Flume 30. Next slide. So for our emergency restoration, Sybil and Reed was received a notice to proceed on September 9th. We were able to make some significant progress on both projects. As we all know, we had some significant and some heavy rain and snow events in October, December, and January, as well as some other events following in March and April. Flume 30, just so you know, we were able to water that up on April 12th. And then Flume 4, 5, and 6 was watered up on May 5th. If you remember on Flume 30, that was originally a 2-year construction project. And I'll go over more of those events here in a bit. Next slide, please. Some photos from right after the fires and what we kind of were dealing with. Flume 4, we restored 216 feet. Flume 5 was 273 feet. Next slide. Flume 6 was around 160 feet long, and Flume 30 was 426 feet that we restored. So with that, I would like to just come over here. Yes. Yeah, I'll stop sharing it. We are going to come over here.
That's pretty flat.
All right. So this is just a brief overview of the whole site, this first flyover. Then we'll go into Flumes 4, then 5, and then 6, and then finally into Flume 30.
Carrie, can you let them know about the concrete that we're using?
I want to just pause right here. That wall was just something else. That's what kicked our hind end through most of the project. Flume 4 was our little problem child. When we dug into that, it was one obstacle after another. In fact, we found on one aspect, we found a void that actually threw our geotechnical engineer for a loop. It should not have been there. It was in a rock formation that should have been all rock. And we had a void in there about the size of a Volkswagen. It was 15 feet long, 5 feet high, and 5 feet deep. So when you look at that, that's a significant effort right there. What I want to point out is there's two different kinds of there's a different kind of concrete on the uphills on the side there. That's some cellular concrete. We're going to go over that a little bit later on. But that was a new aspect that we did for these projects. It allowed us to have a bench there to take some future impacts, as well as not put any more pressure onto the canal. But we'll get to that in just a bit. Was that what you wanted me to cover, Jim?
Yeah, and maybe the depth of that section in Flume 4 right at the left side there.
The depth. Oh, yeah. The wall right there is, you can see, it's about 30, 40 feet we had to go down to get down to stable earth and then start building back up. So that's what I mean. It was a significant effort to get to this point.
Terry, how tall is the wall?
That wall's probably, Paul, I'm looking about 30 feet. Yeah.
Wow, so twice to go down that deep?
Another 10 feet or so on some of that area.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Flume 5. You can see our bypass piping from the blue line that we have there. Up a little bit further. So I want to just point out, you're going to see in a little bit here on the left, again, more cellular concrete was placed here. But that's on the, you can see the voids that we were filling in on the left side there. The cellular concrete had to be put into 3-foot lifts. So it's very specialized. And so it took a couple of pours in order to do it. Usually we can come in and do it in one big monolithic pour, but with the cellular, they're 3-foot lifts. We had to let it set up overnight, and then we can come in. And we're somewhere, and some of those heights are 9 feet. So it's about 3 days worth of pouring. We had our problem child. This was our this was what we trained there. Not overall view, you can see the borrow area. Some of you have been up there, and we've showed some pictures in the past of all the machines working there. We're in the process of now getting that ready for the Forest Service back to restoration points. We have the extra soil that we generated during the project. We do have that marked on GPS locations for when we do go in to replace the remaining part of Flume 4. If we need that soil, we know where it's at. So we've got all that, like I said, on some GPS coordinates. So on this one, you can see the building on the left is the exit portal for the Mill to Bull Tunnel. We have a Bull Creek that we have bypassed. That's the black piping you see there. And that's the new, on the right is our new retaining wall for the old block wall that used to be there. That picture right there, so on the right now is where the cellular concrete will be placed, which we'll be discussing a little later. hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of good to see when we go through it, the steps it takes to get some of these projects in and out over a short period of time, which is what we've done. Next slide, please, Jan. So some statistics just to kind of go over what we've kind of been doing. The total hours worked on flumes 4, 5, and 6 was just under, at the point we put this together, 45,500 man-hours. On-site workers on site hit a peak of 50 with 75 pieces of equipment. There was 194 days of actual working days. That doesn't count the weather days that we weren't able to work, but 194 working days in order to get the water flowing. We reclaimed 6 miles of existing Forest Service and SPI roads and constructed approximately 3,000 feet of new roads. To date, we have spent just under $13 million, and I'll have another slide kind of breaking down some of our finances on this.
Let me make sure I'm on. This wasn't in the original board packet, right, or was it?
This slide was.
Okay,
The next slide after it is one that was not.
okay, because
Yeah.
all right, so I was getting them confused, all
Yeah.
right.
So we had, when we put this back together, we had anticipated an end of June completion date. Because of some safety considerations, we're actually going to have to go back in during the next outage and finish some fence work and some other minor little bit of work to get everything finally completed. But that shouldn't take us about more than a month, I would anticipate, when the outage in October. So we will kind of hold off on some of this stuff until we can get the water off again and be able to safely go in. So that's one little change. Next slide, please. So this is a new slide that we put in, kind of shows where we're at as far as our funding and the spending. The board authorized $17 million. As of April 22nd, we have spent, just like I said, under $13 million. For engineering and GHD, we based that on about 1.7 million, and we're at about 1.2. So we're projecting to come in under budget, is what, and I just don't see, with where we're at on our construction and what little we have left, we'll be coming under budget on these projects. Next slide. So Flume 30, again, we condensed a 2-year construction contract to a single outage. It was interesting to note that when we hit our first big snowstorm in December, we had just finished completing the road, which was our milestone for first year work. We have total, as again, when we put the board packet together, around just a little under 38,000 work hours. We've had anywhere from 5 to 32 people working with 32 pieces of equipment. We did it in 170 days. And so that allowed us to pull alder water that we can use for power generation. It also helped speed up our water up of the canal, because pulling alder water through to Forebay was about 3/4 of the length of the canal. So that was a big help in getting full. When we came in May, we only had that little bit left to get cleaned out and ready to go, and we could be up to full water. So that was a big milestone just to be able to get Flume 30 done. We reclaimed about 3.5 miles of Forest Service road and constructed just under 2,000 feet of new road. To date on the contract, we've spent just a little over $7 million, which is 80%. And we are anticipating about mid-June to have full completion of this project. We'll be able to walk away from this one. Next slide. So this gets into our change orders and what we're trying to deal with. We brought to the board a couple on our updates about the hazardous waste removal and the big change order that we were expecting with that. Kind of wanted to go over what that entailed. So when the wood burned on the flumes, it was pressure-treated wood that put a bunch of heavy metals and other stuff into the soil. So we ended up having to excavate anywhere from 6 inches to 18 inches of soil off of the site just to get it down. What you see on the right is also we took care of the stuff that burned at Camp 2. You can see the guys right there. They're in the hazmat suits. That's not the best ideal working conditions if you've ever had to put one of those on. You get to sweat really good. It's like your own homemade sauna. But you can see what they're putting everything in the bags, and then those get hauled off. Next slide. So what we did, took 12 days to get everything bagged up. And then it took another 13 days to get it from Camp 2 or Flume 30 down to our construction trailer by, if you remember the Esmeralda tunnel entrance, where we had the failure there where the trailer was, that's where we kind of staged everything. And then over the next few months, everything was transported to Nevada, to the actual disposal site. So it was 1,600 man-hours to do all that work. We had anywhere from 10 to 15 people working 10 to 12 hours a day to get that done. And we removed 197 tons, and that's just Flume 30, and in 15 bins. Next slide. Going back to the cellular concrete. Do we have so we have a little show and tell. This is a sample. If you want to just pass it, leave it in the bag. It'll give you a feel of what this stuff is. So imagine mixing cement with shaving cream. That's basically what cellular concrete is. It's very, very light. And like I said, it does two purposes for us. One, it prevents the pressure against the flume because it's so light. When I was down at Sac County, we actually put a bunch of this stuff on some sewer pipe because they were building an overpass, and we had to lighten all that pressure up. So it's a really great product. The second thing it does is it brings up all that narrow, if you remember in the video, especially on Flume 30 here, we have some very narrow gaps to fill in. Getting rocks down there and taking impacts behind that is a maintenance nightmare. So it allows us to fill it up to the top of the canal and direct, if we're going to take any impacts, where we could easily come in and repair or get them out. So that's what they'll be doing. This is, like I said, Flume 5 right here. You can see the guy with the hose. He's standing on the previous day's section of cellular concrete, getting that last lift in. No, not even close. So most of the concrete that we put up here is in the 5,000 PSI. This stuff is anywhere from 90 to 150. It's easily, what we call easily diggable. You can dig it with a shovel, as you can feel with that light weight. It's
It feels like a pumice.
yes. I think if you scraped off the little finish edge on that, you'd be great in the shower. Take care of my calloused feet.
But the chemicals in it might,
Okay, so there might be some drawbacks.
okay.
But it's like I said, it's a great product. I've used it a few times in my career, and it does really hold up well. Next slide. So as far as we are with our funding now with Flume 30, the original contract to Sybil and Reed was just about $8.8 million. So far, and this includes the two change orders before the board today, change orders 9 and 10, we've processed, or in the works of processing, around $1 million in change orders. We have that number 12 to 16 pending, actually went up a couple. Totaling to go out more is another 300,000. But we're in the process right now of doing the deductive change orders, some efficiencies that we got. As you can imagine, we didn't have to do 2 mobilizations, so we got some stuff there. We didn't have to worry about demolition. The fire took care of that for us. And there's just numerous other things. When changing the design to the U-shaped canal versus the trapezoidal, we saved on a bunch on some MSE wall. Right now, we have about 6 of those deductive change orders in the hopper at about a little over $500,000. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll get the remaining. It's going to bring our total contract price into about $9.1 million, which is about 3% over the original construction price. and we still have a pretty decent contingency that we're still working with. So we're not needing to come back for additional funding at this time and not anticipating any whatsoever. And I think doing, condensing this 2-year project into one and to have these kind of efficiencies is just really a testament to all the crew that worked out with Sybil and Reed, all their subcontractors, the district, our design engineers, everything coming together just to get this done in those 170 days. Next slide. So this is our other new slide. And with this, I'm going to turn some time over to Elizabeth Dawson for some acknowledgements.
Thank you, Carrie. Again, Elizabeth Dawson, Engineering Manager. When the Caldor fire happened, we asked for authorization to turn to our A-team, which is the same team that we used in the 2017 storm repairs. And so I just want to make some acknowledgements of that leadership team that worked so hard and diligently on this project. To start with, the design engineer with GHD, that team was led by Amy Deacon, Dave Germstead, Tom Burkhart, and Steve Millett. They not only had to design flumes 4, 5, and 6, but also redesign flume 30 from a 2-year project to 1-year project. And as Carrie pointed out, they encountered some really difficult geotechnical issues and challenges that we have never seen before. Under flume 4 alone, there's 5 different foundation designs that were designed and constructed by SRC. To SRC, Sybil and Reed, they have been just outstanding throughout this entire process. As you all know, there's significant material delivery issues, costs are rising enormously, supply chain issues. This contractor, with their relationships and their partnerships in the industry, was able to make sure that we had concrete deliveries, even on Saturdays, rebar placements, concrete finishers, whenever we needed them at the project site. And this is because of their reputation and partnerships that they've established in the industry. It really kept the crews moving, it kept everybody productive and costs down. Turning to our internal team, Mike Barron and Brian Deason had those established relationships that allowed us to reach out to the Forest Service and SPI and get the approvals to start working on this project just within days after the Caldor fire happened. They provide guidance and compliance with the SWIP measures, along with BT Consulting, which is a consultant that we hired as well to do the monitoring. And then also our inspection team, led by Marty Humberg and Lane Wybright, supplemented by Brian Isiger and Chris Walker from GHD. The term inspector is really a misnomer because they provided a bridge between the design and the construction, making sure that they were pulling from their strong expertise and constructability and really looking for efficiencies at every step of the way. And then lastly, to Carrie, our consummate professional project leader, project manager, he kept everybody focused. He kept an eye on efficiencies in staff and all the crews that were working to make sure that the expenditures on the project were kept low, but also efficient. He spearheaded the identifying the complex issues that we encountered and partnerships and led partnership discussions with the team almost on a daily basis to develop solutions for these complex projects. The last thing I want to say is safety. As Carrie said, there was nearly 80,000 man-hours expended on these projects over a very short time frame. There was not one lost time injury on all these projects throughout this work. I think the only incident on 4, 5, and 6 was somebody backing into Paul Harlow's truck. So we're really proud of that statistic, and then we just want to thank you all for your support while we were working on these projects. So is there anything you want to add?
With that,
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you. The coordination, the logistics, the adjusting on the fly to unexpected conditions, it's just phenomenal. I mean, very, very impressive, and I know how hard it is. So thank you all for the hard work that you did. Thank you.
Well, as the old guy here, we've used Sibble and Reed under the contracts, and it's a very, very responsible organization. Hopefully, we will not be in another situation where we have to do it in a mad rush like this one, but I wanted to thank our staff, and I reach out to the Forest Service and the SBI and thank them for their cooperation. But I want to especially thank Sibble and Reed for a tremendous job. Thank you very much.
I would just echo that, Paul. You know, life's all about relationships, and you guys have continued to work towards that standard in this county for a long, long time. And our customers are the beneficiaries, thanks to staff as well. Outstanding job, collaboration and cooperation. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
I can't say any more words than what has already been said, but, you know, this type of emergency, which impacted this whole county, is a significant priority, was a significant priority, and this board supported the general manager and supported the engineering department to move forward. And it's with that leadership of teamwork, that knowing that we need to get the job done. The good thing to know is that, you know, Flume 30, which would have taken 2 years, is now ahead of the game. So what kind of project are you going to come up with next?
I've got a list of 19 sitting on my desk.
We'll talk about it later. But thank you to all the vendors and all the people who joined. And you know what? That video needs to be up online.
It will be shortly. We've already sent the link to Jesse, so it's.
You know how I am about show and tell. So thank you very much.
With that, I'd also like to, if I can, bring Paul up. He has a little presentation. Is that all right?
Is this okay?
It's up to Paul. Do you want to go here, Paul, or? Or right there? Okay, I'm going to go there. Okay.
So first, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to do that project. It was nice of you guys and Jim, you know, for thinking of us. And, you know, the EID team, you know, I mean, a lot of times people sit there and say the contractor did this, contractor, but none of this could have not happened without Carrie and Elizabeth. And I had many meetings with them from the beginning to the end. And, you know, just those two, you know, I'm responsible for everybody's safety. Is it on? You know, I'm the general superintendent, so I'm responsible for everybody at Sibble and Reed. But when Elizabeth and Carrie, when you're walking the flume and they say, hey, everything's looking good and nobody's got hurt and everybody goes home. You know, I'm 65 years old and getting, you know, ready to retire. And the last thing I want is have to call up somebody's wife or mother and tell them that I was responsible for them to get hurt. And Elizabeth and Carrie told me throughout the whole project that we needed water, but we want everybody to go home safely every day. I mean, High Sierra came up there with trucks, you know, over 14,000 hours. Carrie, you know, chimed in about, we found that, you know, cave basically. You know, that happened at like 6 o'clock on Friday. We got to meet with the engineers at 10 o'clock on Saturday, and they came up with a fix. Well, the fix they come up with isn't something I have in my back pocket. So Melanie had to go down to Placerville and go to several, you know, those places where you go buy decorative rock to get pea gravel and pay with her credit card to get up there so we could keep going so we wouldn't lose 2 days. And, you know, 2 days is a lot of time when you're up there trying to get the water on. So, you know, Marty, he was our inspector, and we had other ones, Chris and those guys. I mean, Marty was there every day, you know, busting his butt, representing you and everybody else here. I mean, we couldn't have done it without Marty. He was very instrumental in working with the engineer. You know, because they come and give you a set of plans in the morning, and then they give you another set of plans in the afternoon sometimes. You know, so, I mean, and
They weren't that quick.
yeah, it was a very challenging project. Like I was telling Jim earlier, me and Tommy ourselves, he was the project manager in charge of this project. We were on another emergency job for DWR. And we had been down there a month before I got a phone call. I was down there on a Saturday when Kerry called me and wanted to know if we had the resources. So we had already been working 7 days a week. And then we went up here and started working 7 days a week. So I appreciate you guys trusting us and giving us the project. It wasn't just Sibling Reed alone. We had Cameron Steel, Folsom Ready Mix, High Sierra, D. Hennessy. I mean, it took a whole team. I mean, it's glad you put my picture in the paper, but everything, but there's a whole lot of other people that were involved, okay? And everybody went home safe, and we got the water on. Now I'd like to present a picture to Mr. Abercrombie of, so you can put outside your office or wherever you'd like to put it. Oh, very nice. Picture of 4 or 5, or picture of 4.
Before and after.
Yeah, and it was shipped.
Still on the ground, still.
It was shipped, it's got a couple of dings in it, so there's another one on the way.
That's all right, we'll put this in engineering. Very nice, hang on for a second. Gotta take the glasses off. Very nice, Paul, just thank you for all the work, all the effort. Hopefully we don't do it again, but thank you also for not saying no. For saying yes, we'll be here.
I probably got part of it.
Mark? Before pictures.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, there was a
Terry,
couple of
just for
these.
your information, I'm gonna take this report to Rotary, and he's gonna take it to Kiwanis, and I just suggest that we make an appointment with the Board of Supervisors to present that for the county. I think it would be an excellent thing about how we have to work, how private industry and EID can work together along with our staff, so I'd like to pursue that.
Great, Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank Kerry personally. I've been in a lot of meetings with Kerry. He used to have long blonde hair. He had a little stress times, but like I've told people, I give stress, I don't accept it.
He's gonna pay for the.
We go to the same barber.
But it's not only Kerry, as, you know, Elizabeth was out there in the middle of a, you know, fire looking at things. Of course, Sibling Reed, excellent contractor. There's a lot of other folks that participated in this, the finance, the insurance, the legal staff, all trying to recover money from insurance, from FEMA. Elizabeth Lieber, but there's more at Elizabeth. Liz Carrington was in there. Tony was involved. I mean, we had a big team in the background, not necessarily focusing on construction, but focusing on getting the resources to pay for all this. But Kerry did a remarkable job. I've told him that this is a project, as a civil engineer, that you just think, you know, if I had a project to work on, this one is tough, but what an experience. Great job, Kerry.
Thank you.
Jackie knew well, too. I'm sure I shouldn't have named people because I'll forget somebody. But this is a career project for you. It's great.
I'd just like to echo Jim's sentiments. Everybody working in the background allowed me to focus on the construction with not having to, you know, taking the burden off of doing the FEMA stuff, the insurance, the financing. You know, it truly is a big team to get something like this onto the ground and functioning again. So I by no means want to think that it was just a few of us. It was a lot of us. It was a big, huge group that just came together to get, like I said, get the water back on.
Well, great job, including Brian Deason. I forgot him. All the tree removal. I mean, it's a big project. So I think at the end of the presentation, I think you had an option that you wanted us
Yeah,
to
we
do.
got to get to that part, I'm sure, to get it. So if we go back to our slides.
Yeah, he needs to ask for money now.
Yeah, we still need money. So, yeah, next slide. So, the board options today, option 1, approve the contract change orders numbers 9 and 10 to Siblin Reed contractors in the not-to-exceed amount of $446,985 for the removal of hazardous waste, and the not-to-exceed amount of $165,300 for the placement of cellular concrete for the Flume 30 replacement project, project number 17041.02.
Move one.
Second.
We can refresh. Now, just to remind the public that we are operating on action item number 15 on the agenda, which we moved up under the information items. So just so long as people know what we're
I
doing
do have a
here.
question. Terry, was it cheaper to go to Nevada for the hazmat disposal than to Hanford?
Yeah, there's only a few select places that
Yeah,
can take
there's only
that.
one in the state that'll take that stuff.
Yeah, so it was, both of them were looked at. I do not know why the other facility was chosen over the one in
Okay.
Nevada over the other.
Just checking.
But, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one that was settled on.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and here's our opportunity to vote. Oh,
After
public
we
comment,
call
I'm
for-
sorry,
So there's no additional
presentation.
comments from the board. So now it's a time for public comment.
Yes.
Jeremiah, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Sharon. Thank you. So I noticed that everybody kind of laughed when the shaving cream was mentioned to be in the cellular concrete. Everybody laughed about the shaving cream. And I'm just wondering, I was doing some research online just now about the chemicals in the foam, and I was just concerned because everything on Google says that it changes the pH level in the water, and I'm just wondering if anybody's done an environmental survey or an environmental report on the harmful chemicals possibly in this concrete that's going directly into our drinking water, changes the pH level and everything. So I would just suggest maybe everybody do the research before you start laughing at, harmful chemicals in our drinking water supply. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I believe that this is not the type of concrete our water is, the flume's not built, is not flowing on that type of cement. The cement that we were talking about is a shoring up cement that provides stabilization underneath those flumes, just to make sure that's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so we have any other comments?
No additional public comments. Looks like we're ready for the vote.
All right.
Action item 15, option 1, moved by Director Osborne, second by Director Veerkamp. Division 1, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries. At this time, do you want to move back up to the information items to utility billing? Or since we just had our water supply update and it's fresh in our mind, would you like to move to action item number 14, the drought emergency declaration? And then we can get on track after that.
That sounds fine. Let's go to item number 14. And this is under action items.
Action item number 14, yes.
Okay, all set. Good morning. Brian Mueller. I'm the Director of Engineering at EID. And this is an action item to discuss our current drought emergency and, with the events that have been unfolding over the spring with the dry weather we've had, the governor issued an executive order And then tomorrow, there will be a state board meeting with a new drought regulation that we'll be complying with. So we thought it'd be a good time to bring this item and reaffirm our stage 1 water alert that we're currently been under since last June. Next slide. Just a few previous board actions on this in the next slide. Basically, in last June, the district has been under a stage 1 water alert requesting 15% voluntary conservation of our customers. There was a brief time last summer where our Outingdale customers were also under a stage 4 emergency when the river dried up and we had to haul water. And then since then, the board has adopted the resolution and ratified the emergency declaration for the drought ever since. So the summary of the issue, as I mentioned, with the dry conditions we've again been experiencing this late spring, the Governor Newsom issued an executive order late March. And that order had multiple things, but essentially it ordered the State Water Resource Control Board to consider adopting emergency regulations that required urban water suppliers like us to implement water shortage response actions. And the order called for a shortage level of up to 20%. I'll get into some of those details. In response, the state board in April released some draft water conservation regulations, and again, tomorrow they'll be the state board will be considering that new regulation, and essentially that identifies demand reduction actions for a shortage contingency plan level of 10 to 20%. And it has also this in parentheses level 2, and that's caused some confusion both by me and with our staff. So I'll try to clarify what level 2 means, because our level 2 drought action is different than what the state considers level 2. Okay, so next slide. Again, we've been under a stage 1 water warnings or water alert since last June, requesting voluntary conservation of up to 15% compared with 2020 demand levels. And Dan Corcoran's been updating the board on just how we've been doing as far as current demands. The governor declared a statewide drought emergency back in 2021 that called on Californians to reduce water usage by 15%. So that was really in line at the time with what the district was asking our customers. And the draft emergency regulation that's been issued by the state board is expected to be adopted tomorrow. So some of the key requirements of that regulation, I'll just read through this real quickly. It requires that each supplier submit to the DWR a preliminary annual water supply and demand assessment. And this was actually defined, and we updated this in our urban water management plan last year, kind of defined what we would be doing. And so this is not a new requirement for us. We were planning to do this in July of this year. This regulation just requires all water agencies to prepare this a month ahead of time. So we'll be doing that. It's essentially a water supply and demand analysis for the next year. So we'll be looking at our available supplies for the next year compared with our expected demand, and reporting what those two are. And we fully expect that our supplies are more than adequate to meet the demands for the next year. Another requirement is for each supplier to submit a water shortage, that has submitted a water shortage contingency plan, which is essentially our drought action plan, to implement by June 10th demand reduction actions that are identified in our plan for a shortage level of 10 to 20%. And then also another point was kind of a new requirement or a new definition of a non-functional turf. So the regulation will say that the use of water for this non-functional turf is not allowed for the next year.
And that's for like commercial,
Yeah, so it's for commercial, industrial accounts, so we'll be notifying our commercial accounts that if they have non-functional turf, which is basically turf that's not used for any recreational purpose, it's just grass that's mowed and not used for anything else. So I don't know, haven't looked at, how many of those instances we have, but I think it's.
I think there's actually some people I'm noticing around the community that are already complying with that, because I've been noticing at some shopping centers and such, they're turning it off and the lawns are turning brown. My biggest concern, and I believe there is an exception to this, is that to keep plants, or especially trees,
Yes.
alive. That was the last drought we had. A lot of trees were lost because people were doing their part. But a lawn, actually surprisingly, lawns can recover. Ours was off for 3 years, and then we got those heavy rains, and about 80% of it came back. It was quite amazing. But a lot of people lost trees, and I think that in part of our efforts this summer, let's encourage conservation, but remind people to save your tree, because it takes 20, 40, 60 years for these trees to grow, and we need them.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. Next slide. Okay, so this is my attempt to explain our drought stages compared to what the state's drought stages are. And this was included in our urban water management plan and drought action plan that was adopted last year. Last year, the state identified 6 stages of drought for suppliers to use if they wished. But they also gave suppliers an option to use their own drought stages, but just have what we call the crosswalk to correlate the state's 6 stages with their own personal ones. So EID chose to keep our 4 stages of drought just for consistency and ease of implementation. And so you can see there with our stage 1, which is up to 15% conservation, it really covers both stage 1 and 2. So with our 15%, we're really within that 10 to 20% action level that the state is requiring right now. Next slide. Let's see, again, the regulation that the state has issued and will be considering requires the actions for a shortage level of 10 to 20%. And given that we're already implementing a stage 1 water alert, which is right in the middle of that 15% conservation on a voluntary basis, we feel that there's no increase in any level of drought stage that we need to go through. The regulations do mandate the irrigation of the non-functional turf, and again, we'll be reaching out to our commercial customers to notify them that regulation. Next slide. And just a refresher on what our current voluntary water efficiency guidelines are, and we'll be again, making some more concerted efforts and increasing our communications to our customers, both on our existing and any new items that we have for the drought. But again, it's applying irrigation water in the evening and early morning hours to avoid evaporation, between 7 p.m. and 10 a.m. Always inspecting your irrigation system for leaks, repairing and replacing those items. Avoiding any runoff from your sprinklers would be another way to get this conservation. We have an item in our drought plan if on a voluntary basis to avoid constructing new swimming pools that would take an additional amount of water from our potable supplies. Next slide. Other general guidelines that aren't specifically in our drought plan, but I think these are also good, and some of these are actually in our water waste ordinance. Again, adjusting sprinklers to prevent overspray. I thought this next one was a good one, and along the lines of Director Day just said that, the message is stress your lawn but save your trees. So if you have, for instance, if you run your sprinklers, each cycle about 10 minutes, if you reduce that by 2 minutes, that's really a 20% savings right there. Or, depending on your situation, you could reduce the number of days of watering instead of, your current schedule. And then also ensuring any ponds or waterways, decorative basins, swimming pools have a water recirculation device. So those are the guidelines and the actions that all our customers are being messaged with. Again, these are some of our water waste ordinances. Don't hose off sidewalks or driveways with water. Use a hose equipped with control nozzles. And then again, turn off irrigation if there's any measurable precipitation before or after. Next slide. Board options. We prepared a resolution, so that just updated some of the recent events that we've covered here. So we're asking the board to adopt a resolution renewing and updating the drought emergency declaration and reaffirm a stage 1 water
Wait,
alert.
can I interrupt? I apologize. This is not correct. We do not want the board to adopt this. We want the board to adopt what is in the agenda and in the board packet, which is adopt a resolution renewing and updating the drought emergency declaration and reaffirm a stage 1 water alert requesting up to 15% voluntary conservation. Again, we're not the district-wide. So basically, all we're removing is the word district-wide. So again, this is action item number 14, option 1, as stated in the board packet and the agenda. Adopt a resolution renewing and updating the drought emergency declaration and reaffirm a stage 1 water alert requesting up to 15% voluntary conservation. Staff's recommendation is option 1. My apologies.
I'll move option 1 with that correction.
This was my, actually, there's no correction because on the agenda and the board packet, it stated correctly. Just on the PowerPoint, it was stated incorrectly, and that is my error. I apologize.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you for catching that, our board clerk.
So moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Veerkamp.
Yes. Are there any comments from the public?
It does not appear there are any comments from the public on action item number 14. We're ready for the vote.
Okay. Board members vote.
Division 1, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Brian.
So President Anzini, we'll get back on track here with information item number 11, feasibility and cost to restructure the district's utility billing and meter reading schedules by Mrs. Downey.
Yes.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jenny Downey, Customer Service Manager here at the district. I'm here today to go over an information item that was requested by Director Day on the feasibility and cost to restructure the district's utility billing and meter reading schedules. One sec while we get it pulled up. Perfect. So next slide. So a summary of issues, the board requested information on the feasibility and cost to restructure the district's current utility billing and meter reading schedules, specifically from bi-monthly to monthly billing. Next slide, please. So a little background, the district currently performs meter reads and bills its customers bi-monthly. We have just under 49,000 meters that are read every 2 months. Payments are due within 21 days of the bill date. And we also have a 5 business day grace period. So it's about 4 weeks is what it ends up being for the due date. Payment options are available to our customers if they're unable to pay their bills on time through multiple payment options. Next slide. So some of our payment options, we have payment plans where customers will call in, come in the office, email. They might request half now, half in a couple weeks. They might want one this month, half of it the next month, just kind of targeting whatever's good for them. We also have estimated billing. We have customers that know that next bill is going to get higher, so they'll call and say, hey, what was my bill last year at this time? They'll pay an estimated amount up front. And then when their bill comes out, they'll pay the remaining amount. We do have a type of budget billing. It's not any formal program, but we have customers that'll call in beginning of the year, say, how much did I pay all last year? And we'll help them establish an amount to build a credit to help them get through those summer months. Then if they start noticing maybe they need to pay a little more, they will do that as well. We also, yes, Ms. Sullivan. We also have our low-income assistance programs if qualified. So some payment options, district's current payment options are commonly used. Just like I said, we tailor them what's best for our customers. By having multiple options will allow our customers and the staff a lot of flexibility. It doesn't make it very hard-lined for them. We have very low delinquency rates, low write-off rates, and they really are substantially lower than industry standards. In our previous bond packages, if you notice those numbers, they're well below the 5%. As far as customer outreach, typically we don't go out and say, hey, can't pay your bill, give us a call. But what we will do is increase some of that visibility for our customers to really know what options are out there. I know sometimes people are embarrassed to ask for payment plans, and so we just want to make sure that they understand they can ask for that and that we will work with them.
Yeah, I think the, reviewing this back when you first put it together and now re-reviewing it, but I think this is really the crux of the matter, the key.
Yeah.
That because with inflationary pressures, water, our rates have been going up. I think if we make sure people know, whether it's Facebook, Nextdoor, the newsletter, so on, that help is available, and to help with those peak summer months especially. I think that will really help a lot, and would be curious to see after we promote this for some months, especially this summer, maybe a follow-up to see, did we get much of a change in people asking for help, or it's people have gotten used to it, because with that's the one thing with auto pay, is sometimes you don't see those bills. You see the bill, you ultimately have to pay it on that credit card or whatever, but I think a little bit out of sight, out of mind sometimes.
Yeah, and we can prepare a memo to the board on that at a later date.
Yeah.
Okay. So next slide. So we're going to go over kind of what we currently do and some other options if we were to switch to monthly billing. So bi-monthly meter reading billing currently, our meter technicians spend over 500 hours performing meter readings. That's for just over 48,000 meters that are cellular, radio, vehicle, manual reads. We have the whole gamut here. The meter technicians then spend about an additional 100 hours performing those reread activities, verifying the reads, looking at high usage, or even investigating possible leaks on both customer side or district side. Our billing staff spends about 200 hours performing all the billing-related activities, producing those bills, the files, read review, and then even some of the delinquency files that we do. So by staying with, look at you quick. By staying with our bi-monthly, again, there's no increased cost to do that. Next slide, please. So if we were to do monthly billing without converting the remainder of our meters to radio, we would essentially need to double our meter staff in order to read all the meters in 1 month instead of 2. We would need to increase our billing staff, about 3 full-time employees, in order to continuously be reviewing those reads and performing those billing tasks. Our current billing system, which is our Hansen system that we're upgrading, would also need to be restructured. All of the tables for billing and rates, tiers, delinquency, we'd have to restructure everything to be at a monthly basis. There's approximately a one-time cost of about $300,000. That's for vehicles, equipments, and for that system restructure. An annual increase would be about $1.5 million, and that's primarily due to the staffing increase.
This confuses me a little bit, because reading through it, the going to monthly reading of meters is a non-starter. That would be way too cost prohibitive. And then the suggestion that I had made, which is this?
It
this is
isn't, yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Of, well, just take their bi-monthly meter read and then just split it in two, and so they have 12 monthly bills. But I understand the extra cost for, in your staff and in programming the software. But why would the meter technician staff have to increase if we're not reading it any differently? We're still reading it twice a month.
That's in a different slide. This is if we are reading. in
Oh,
that month.
okay.
Yes,
So I'm
exactly.
I'm
We're
ahead.
just
I
not
jumped
there
ahead.
yet. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So then if we were to convert the meters to radio, to perform the monthly billing, you would still need to increase the meter staff, but instead of doubling it, you'd only need about 3 of them in order to perform those tasks. You'd still have to increase the utility billing staff to perform those tasks. You'd still have to update the Hanson billing software. You would have to convert those 18,000 meters, and at current cost, it's about $13.5 million to do that. We've slowly been upgrading them through our CIP program, and as they fail. And all new meters that go in the ground are radio read as well.
Right.
So that is still an increase of 1.3 million for.
We're doing it, but on a much slower pace than
Yes.
suddenly trying to do it rapidly. Yeah.
Exactly. So next slide. So this is your hybrid billing. This is really what you were talking about exactly. So where you would continue reading the meter every 2 months, but you would have to send out 2 separate bills with 2 separate due dates on them. You still have to change the programming costs. That increased annual cost that we're talking about, you'd still have to have some utility billing technicians, and you also have to then almost double your bill print and payment processing. So that's where that $950,000 comes into play.
Right, and probably some fixed costs on the credit card
Yes, and
billing
that is-
payment.
Yes, because credit card, not only you pay multiple fees to credit card companies.
Right.
You have a percentage based on the dollar amount that's charged, and you then also have a per transaction. So if someone only ever paid every 2 months and now they're paying monthly, you're still paying that same fixed cost.
Right, that
Yeah.
$1.25 or whatever it is,
Yes.
it's going to be doubled.
You'd be double. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Next slide. So some of our other neighboring water agencies, bi-monthly billing is still a very common practice. City of Placerville, Carmichael, Citrus Heights, Fair Oaks, Sac County, and San Juan. Placer County Water Agency did bite the bullet and went for that monthly billing.
Have we been able, because in reviewing the original packet, they were putting a lot of money and resources into this transition. And have we been able to find out what their rationale, their motivation for making that big commitment?
So I spoke to the manager over there a couple times, bugging him about this, asking why they were doing it. And it's for the reasons that you would think. They were wanting better reporting, smaller bills for their customers. That's at least what their intent was when they've done it. But as you've said, they upgraded their meters over the past decade, kind of like we did with our CIP, and then began that actual transition to monthly. So I don't know if that was their intent. I can't really answer for them. I think they were trying to get everything over to radio read.
Yeah, but it sounds like they're a little further ahead on meter replacement.
And they have less meters than we do as well.
Right,
So,
yeah. Less meters, bigger water users.
yes.
Add more money.
Yeah.
Right, next.
It'd be just curious to, as time goes along, to maybe check in with them and say, how's that going? And see, maybe we'll get an answer, maybe not, but,
Yep.
yeah.
Sounds good. Next slide. So I know this is an information item, but we did put in here a staff recommendation to essentially stick with our bi-monthly billing and why we should really do that. The majority of our customers are able to manage their accounts without any assistance. We have less than a 4% delinquency rate. That was based on 2021. Our low write-off rates, the accounts that get sent to collections are less than 1%, which is way lower than a lot of the industry standards out there. We have many payment options available for our customers, and as we said, we will continue with that outreach and be more transparent in what's available to them. We also have the low-income assistance with our Helping Hands, and then now the new federal low-income assistance program. And by continuing to do this, there is no additional cost to the district for that.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you guys putting this together, and it was very informative. And I would like to see, maybe this fall, a report after, especially promote the alternatives. You have the budget billing, you have the averaged out, billing and all those sort of things, is really promote those heavily, and let's see what kind of response. Because I think oftentimes there's people that need help, but they don't know what to do or where to turn.
Absolutely. We'll get a memo to the board at the end of the year, beginning of next year with that information.
Great, I appreciate it a lot.
Okay, so I have a few things, because when I first got on the board, this was one of my key issues. The reason when I moved here and I got a huge water bill and I was only getting it every 2 months, was completely out of the realm of what I expected. My real estate agent should have told me. But see, more often than not, people relocating up here don't realize that the urban way of doing your bills and coming into this area is a little bit different. My biggest concern is for our low-income residents. And when I say low income, with the cost of inflation this last year, we have a lot of more low-income people, and particularly seniors. And it's the seniors who stop watering their front lawns because they don't know what else to do. We don't have an outreach to our community services groups. I'm getting it from Cameron Park occasionally. I have friends in El Dorado Hills who says they're not getting any kind of information other than what they expect from their board of directors. The causes of this, you may be in a very, very expensive house, but you may have a very low income coming in. Majority of our people are over the age of 60. So when you look at the age and you look at the requirements of running a house, and we had a lot of people who are in that fray right now. Seriously, a lot of friends who are relocating because they can't afford to live here, or they're moving into another area of being cared for by somebody else. That means there is upkeep, maintenance that has to be done to those homes that they are taken care of, and it's overwhelming when you don't have an outreach. And a lot of these people don't use the internet for outreach. They read the newspaper, they read the local magazines that come through, and above all, they always read the letters to the editors from some disgruntled person who's writing about their water bill. So, we really have to have some outreach in informing people. One of the things, especially when we're in the drought, is in order to reduce your water, stop watering your lawn, we need to have people go and tell them that. Or we have an auditor, we have an audit system. It could get enhanced at a small fraction of cost of somebody to go and do or show how they can take care of their Japanese maple, or how they can take care of their huge tree that is dying. So, there's a certain amount of community effort that could be done. And since we spread across all this area of our 63,000 customers, I know we can't reach them all, but if having a outreach program, not digital, but face-to-face, and dog and pony shows, they do work. People are starting to come out and go to them. So I'm glad we're discussing this, because it is something I've always wanted, and I'm glad that Director Day brought it up. Ultimately, it would be nice if we were like Placer County and had a lot of money, but we don't. But they have Roseville, they supply the water for very large areas. So that's all I have to say about that. I really appreciate you spending a lot of time and effort. I know it's going to get better, because as time goes on, we're going to become more digitally friendly and understand what Mother Earth is doing to us here. So, but we need to make it easy for seniors, most of all, who don't believe that they're low income.
Yeah, I just kind of echo that in the sense of it. There's, it's anecdotal, but there are a lot of, we know a lot of people, and these are people with means, one would consider relatively affluent, but they're moving out of the area because of PG&E and EID, because they want to retire and they know their income is going to be fixed. And so that's something we need to try to reach out to people, because there's a lot of middle class, quote unquote, people that are being hit with some of this. And so again, I look forward to Jesse's efforts. I know he's good at it, so I'm curious to see how that goes.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just add that, thank you very much for the information. I think it's been put together very well, and at this point, I'm in your camp with status quo, and we'll see if the need rises or not.
Good. Thank you very much.
But
for your
Jenny is
input.
my go-to gal when somebody calls and says, I got a problem with my bill. And so your staff does a remarkable job of taking care of folks out there, so. And again, this rebate or assistance program that's coming in June will be a benefit to the district also.
Thank you.
If we don't have any additional board comment, then we'll call for public comment on information item number 11. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on information item number 11. It looks like we can move to director item number 12.
Okay, item number 12.
Well, good morning. My name is Mike Brink. I'm the supervisor of Development Services that's here. I'm here on behalf of Director Veerkamp's request to have you consider SBI's request to use the temporary water use program at ag rates to water deck logs at the Camino site as a result of the Caldor fire. Next slide. Previous board actions back in November of 2006, the board approved the BP Board Policy 9000 Customer Service Series, which included AR 9024, which describes the use of, or authorized use of water at ag rates. And as mentioned, last board meeting, Director Veerkamp requested that staff bring this item to the board to consider a variance for the use of ag rates to water deck logs for a limited period. Next slide. A summary of the issue. As we all know, the Caldor fire burned thousands of acres of trees. A lot of that was located on SBI's property, and also burned trees on Forest Service land and private properties. To preserve the commercial value, those logs must be logged, or trees must be logged in 1 year of damage. Those logs must be decked and watered to preserve the commercial value. And also removing the trees is needed for forest restoration and public safety. Next slide. Some background about the SPI. Their mill in Camino is currently closed. They desire to use their site to deck and water logs at the Camino site, followed by off-site milling down the hill. SPI did relinquish the water meters they previously used to water logs when the mill was active, and at that time, they used the ag rate was an authorized use for deck logs. And as I mentioned, AR 9024 currently does not authorize using ag rate water for watering deck logs. Next slide. The water demands and duration. SPI estimates needing water until the rainy season, so maybe about 6 months from now, and a maximum continuous flow rate of up to 200 gallons per minute. The water that does drain off the logs will be drained into a detention pond and recirculated back to the ponds. And just for an idea about the volume of water, 200 gallons per minute for 6 months equals 160 acre-feet of water over that 6-month period.
But it would theoretically be less than that because of what they can recycle?
Correct. They mentioned to me 200 gallons per minute max, so that'd be probably worst-case scenario based on what their estimated use is. Next slide. Moving on to the temporary water use program. That program provides a temporary water meter and a backflow device that you typically see attached to a fire hydrant for construction water. They also could be attached to a blow-off on our water system. That program does require a $4,000 deposit for the hardware, a $35 permit fee, a $6 per day rental fee, and that program does build the commodity rate at 2 times commercial rates. It's also important to know there's no facility capacity charge associated with the temporary water use program. Revenue considerations, as Brian mentioned, the district does have sufficient water supply to meet this demand. If this water was not used for this purpose, it'd go through the powerhouse. That generates $90 per acre foot for all the water going through the powerhouse. Water billed at ag rates generates $92 per acre foot. So there'd be no net loss in revenue versus going through the powerhouse and some minor income generated through the temporary water use program. Board options. Option 1, approve SPI's request to use the temporary water use program at ag rates for a period not to exceed 6 months to water decked logs at the communal site as a result of the Caldwell fire. Option 2, take other action. Option 3, take no action. And it's board preference.
Move on.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Director Osborne, seconded by Director Veerkamp for, what is this item number? Oh,
Director item number 12.
Director item number 12.
Just the one comment I have, that the, on the next to last slide or whatever, we're basically looking at the, it was, my greatest concern was revenue, or revenue loss on our part, but it's pretty close to break even. And I think it's important to emphasize this is to help clean up damage from the Caldor fire. It's helped to mitigate future fire hazards. So I think there's a lot of positives for the community.
Yes, and certainly if you compare this to the commercial rate under the standard temporary water use, that revenue would be significantly higher, but the SPI, I understand, would not even use it. So the real comparison is what's down the generator or what's through the temporary water use at ag rates.
This is an unusual circumstance where with the mill closing in Camino, which is unfortunate for all kinds of other reasons, but the mill at Lincoln cannot handle the load that's going in day after day after day that's coming off of the Caldor fire. If you drive to 50, you'll see logs decked, and you drive up to Tahoe, there's logs decked everywhere. And if you don't keep especially the pine, if you don't keep it wet, it'll deteriorate rapidly and be unusable. So it's just good common sense to it. And we're in a situation where we have a resource that will deteriorate within a very short period of time if we don't mitigate it and put it to good use.
Okay. Any others? Any public comment?
This is for members of the public wishing to speak on Director item number 12, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Veerkamp. Jeremiah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council. I was just wondering if anybody has considered the option of shipping logs to other countries, exporting it. We could, put these logs in containers and put some water in there, keep it humid, and ship these logs across seas and possibly generate revenue like that instead of the possibility of this wood deteriorating. It's really hot in the summer right now. So if we could just collect it in, some shipping containers, 40-foot or 45-foot or shipping containers, then, we could sell wood to other countries.
Thank you, Thank you, Jeremiah. There is a problem with this. One is the wood is not EID owned. It's owned by Sierra Pacific Industries, who's clearing out the wood from the Caldor fire burns. And they just need to stack it and keep it wet because there's no room in Lincoln, California to mill it. So it is not ours to make that decision, but SPI is asking us to do this, and we are going to provide them with the agricultural water they need to keep the logs wet.
If it's approved by the board.
If it's approved, right. I hope you understand that now. All right.
It appears we're ready for the vote on Director Item Number 12. Division 1, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
We are now ready for action item number 13.
Move one.
Second.
Hold on for,
Okay, so there's been a motion to approve item number 13 and seconded by Director Day. And Director Veerkamp is recusing himself. Any public comment? This is a regular general warrant register.
it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 13. Option 1 moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Day, with Director Veerkamp recusing himself, and we are ready for a vote.
Okay?
One, 4, and 5 voting aye, motion carries.
Okay. Item number 16, am I correct? All right.
Yes.
Nice tie.
Thank you.
That's an old joke we have been going around for a long time.
All right.
Good morning, thanks. I'm Kurt Mikula, a Drinking Water Operations and Maintenance Supervisor. And I'm here today, we're gonna talk about an action item for our floating covers storage units. And next slide. Right now, EID owns and operates 7 drinking water floating cover storage facilities. Throughout this presentation, I'll use the word floating covers because that's what they really are. And it's a fine film, probably about 45 mils thick. That's the layer above our drinking water that's protecting it from debris and birds and things of that nature. I'm also going to talk about some of the requirements from the Safe Drinking Water Act, and then I'll talk about our Drinking Water Division permit requirements, and then I'll get into the proposed contract and explain what we're going to do with what we need to do with that. First, I want to recite our mission statement, and that's going to help me explain why we're going to do this. We are a public agency dedicated to providing high-quality water, wastewater treatment, recycled water, hydropower, and recreation service in an environmentally and fiscally responsible manner. And so good maintenance is going to help us protect the quality of the water. And by breaking it down the way we're proposing, it's going to be a pretty good fiscally sound approach to getting the work that we need done completed. Next slide. EID, we have 37 total drinking water storage facilities. On the left is Reservoir 12, that's concrete. In the middle is a floating covered reservoir, it's a hypalon membrane. And then on the right, we have a steel tank. Most of our storage is steel tanks. And what they do is the storage provides ample supplies during peak periods that we have in the morning and then in the evening of every day. And then it also provides storage for the firefighting efforts. In the event there's a large fire, we at least have a reserve in storage to use for that. All of those storage units require maintenance. They require cleaning, repairs, and a lot of other things just to make sure that we preserve water quality. Next slide. One of the reasons we maintain the reservoirs the way we do, California Safe Drinking Water Act. It was enacted in 1974, and that was to protect the public's drinking water. under that act of Congress, the EPA laid out clear pathway to get this done. Protecting and maintaining each facility from corrosion or contamination and sediment, that's what it takes on a regular basis. Go in and clean them out and make sure that they're still looking good. We are required to conduct inspections to identify current and potential problems that we may have with water quality. It maintains our hypalon membranes, our floating covers, free of debris. Like I say, a lot of pine trees, pine needles, pine cones, geese. Sometimes we have tears and rips that we have to take care of. It helps us avoid the microbiological, chemical, and physical water quality problems in the drinking water. So, next slide, please. The Division of Drinking Water Operations Permit requires that we inspect the interior of each storage facility at least once every 5 years. It also mandates that we inspect the interior of our floating covered reservoirs annually. And it also mandates that we clean the exterior surface of these floating covers at least 2 times a year. It requires us to repair any rips, tears, or any other deficiencies that we note during the inspections. The benefits, there's a long list, but a few of them, it helps prolong the asset life. Currently, these floating covered reservoirs already exceed the manufacturer's recommended lifespan. It helps us prioritize rehabilitation, repairs, and replacement projects. It helps us meet expectations as far as the length of the living hypalon covers and regulatory requirements. It provides early detection of the floating cover issues. Once we get on top of them, we can find leaks, we can find tears and things like that. It helps us maintain the water quality. It's just a fine layer that's protecting the finished drinking water. Next. It gets us into the scope of work that needs to be done here. Each covered reservoir needs to be inspected, cleaned, and repaired. It requires removing and reinstalling the weights in the membrane. The design has troughs that take rainwater and it removes it off of there. But it doesn't do anything for branches or pine cones or rocks or anything like that. They get out there, they have to wash it down, they have to clean the cover, they have to inspect it for minor repairs like tears or rock or little holes like that. And the reservoirs have to remain online during the whole process. Next slide. These pictures, this is Moose Hall Reservoir. On the left, that's an accumulation of debris during the summer months when it's dry. So right just before the rains, it's a good time to get out there and make that sweep. Get all the debris off, remove the trough, the sand tubes in the trough. They're 10 feet long, 6 feet or 6 inches in diameter, so they're very heavy. And then the next time is after the rains, we clean it up again and try to do it at least twice a year. Sometimes we have to do it a little bit more than that. Next slide. So the process begins with cleaning the debris off. They can either blow it, sweep it, either way, they get it off the cover. Then a crew of this crew took 4 people just to separate the troughs to get the sand tubes out so that we can expose the trough and look for leaks and get rid of that debris. Next slide. You can see the amount of accumulation that occurs in just a 6-month period. So now that the sand tubes were removed, you can see that the trough was separated, and now it's easier to clean and look for leaks. Next slide. it does take more than a few people to do the work. You can see the sand tubes on the lower portion of the pictures. That's how big they are. One person can hardly move them without hurting themselves. So it takes a couple, some rope, a pretty good technique to get rid of them. Next one. After that is done, then it's washing it down, sweeping it off, getting all of it cleaned up so that you can inspect it and look for leaks or tears. Next slide. Then repair the leaks that we do find. You can see this one here on the left. They actually caused that by their technique in trying to separate the troughs. But just below that, you can see other repairs that have been previously made already. Next slide. Once we make all the repairs and get it all cleaned off, then it's time to reinstall the sand tubes to bring the troughs together and act again as rainwater removal troughs. Next slide. So EID in March of this year, hoping to be more efficient, we sent out a request for bids for potable water storage, reservoir inspection and cleaning, along with the Hypalon membrane maintenance repairs. And the reason we call it that, that's what they call it in the industry, and they knew what we're talking about when we say that. We received 3 bids. Only one of them was qualified for the floating covered reservoir maintenance. 2 qualified bids for the interior inspections. It was determined to just reject all the bids, and next slide, and pursue procurement by negotiation with Aquatech for the cleaning of the covered reservoirs, the surface, the exterior. They've demonstrated years of experience and success with us, and they were really the only ones who had verifiable experience on dealing with the Hypalon covers. We also pursued by negotiation a 1-year contract with H2O Solutions for the interior inspection and cleaning. We talked about giving them a 1-year contract so we can see how they do. They've demonstrated by vetting out with their the people that they use as recommendations that they can do the work. They've just never worked for EID before. They were a lot lower in cost for that part of the bid, so we decided to break it up. Go ahead. Here it explains the proposal in detail that I'm asking for on the floating covered reservoirs. Moose Hall Reservoir, Pollock Pines, those are the names of our floating covers. And the cost for 1 year, which would give me 2 times each site, so 14 cleanings. Once in the spring after rains and once in the fall before rains. That's typically how we do it. When you think about how big they are, Moose Hall, it's only 25,000 square feet. That's not very big, but Dolomite, Reservoir 11, those are 70,000, 80,000 square feet. They're huge. It takes a lot of work to get them clean.
I have a question on the, so by rejecting the bids and then negotiating, we were able to pick the best of the 2 and actually get better pricing?
Exactly. In totality, everybody had a price. We went to the lowest one, vetted them out. However, they just had no experience with the floating covers.
Right.
And that's one of the things we have to get going on right now. We're behind a little bit and just trying to catch up.
Okay, thank you.
One thing to note is we have a lot of work that goes on these covers. We're always working on them. It's extensive, the amount of effort we put on keeping that cover serviceable. And if we don't, there's an increased risk of contamination. And the ultimate goal would be to replace these covered reservoirs with steel or concrete. Concrete at Reservoir 12 and Reservoir A, we've been in there once every 5 years just to clean. The tanks, as you know, we're working on fairly new tanks. We're already rehabilitating them. So sometime down the road, the CIP is going to include phasing these reservoirs out, these covered reservoirs out. Next. So the options for us are to consider awarding a contract to Aquatech Company in the not-to-exceed amount of $367,680 for the biannual exterior cleaning and repair of 7 drinking water reservoir floating covers for a period of 2 years, and then authorize the general manager to extend the contract for up to 3 additional 1-year periods, subject to the annual contract amount increasing by no more than 5% annually in each of the years 3 through 5. Option 2, take no action. We recommend option 1. Are there any questions?
For the record, the option 1 is correct. However, you would not consider awarding, you would award through option 1 as stated on the AIS and the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll move option 1.
I'll second.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded by Director Veerkamp and by Director Day to move forward on option 1 for item number 16.
That's what you get for saving the best for last.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Hold on now.
We haven't voted yet. So are there any comments from the public?
It does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 16. Option 1 moved by Director Veerkamp and seconded by Director Day. And it looks like we are ready for a vote. Division 1, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right. Any other items here that, before we,
The regular agenda up here, we went through all the items on the regular agenda. Now we're ready for the board to move into closed session.
thank you.
President Anzini, I would just like to point out to Kurt that his item was not last. So,
It's important, it is important.
Stick around, Kurt, if you want.
and with that, I anticipate that the board's consideration of closed session items A and B, as reflected on today's agenda, will require at least 30 minutes.
Okay,
At least.
So the board will not report back prior to 11:45 a.m. For the purposes of this Zoom meeting, we will shut it down and reopen not before 11:45 a.m. However, it could be after.
Goodbye.
President Anzini, to report out of closed session, the board met and provided direction to its negotiators in closed session item A and to council on closed session item B. It provided direction but took no reportable action, and that concludes my report.
any items that board members want the general manager to take notes on for future items?
We just have a several direction to staff, but no review of assignments at this time. And then just remind board members to take a look at next meetings.
I would like to have a presentation in the near future on what we're doing for water conservation in planting, where we can do drought resistance plants or have a presentation garden of some kind or some kind of idea of what we could do to interact with the public on what they can do when they're replanting. I know this is your business, but
We do have kind of a sample garden out front, and then we do have a list of recommended plants on the website. It's actually during a drought is not a good time to plant drought-resistant plants. It's just
True.
better not to plant if you can avoid it. And especially in the summer, maybe in the fall you could do it. But
We can have a general manager's information item that says, here's the link, here's some of the activities. you
if we
can
could
do.
do something like that, that could be all by itself, not covered up with a bunch of other reports.
Right.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, is this something you wanted us to wait because it's not a good time to be planting?
I think people are planting no matter what.
I understand that people may be doing it, but it's not something that we're encouraging during this time, so I don't want to send the wrong message just asking for clarification.
No, we'll bring back what you can or should do or shouldn't do and what
Yeah.
to plant.
Because we've said it in the meetings, but I believe that maybe we could show a little bit more direction with hands-on. That's all I have to say on that. Move for adjournment?
At 12,
Okay.
12:14.